Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, Season 12, Episode 1. I know it's a bit of a doom and gloom day, kind of, sort of, depending on how your perspective of John Butler being fired by the University of Nebraska is, but welcome to the Carriker Chronicles. This is my gut reaction to John Butler being let go as Nebraska's defensive coordinator. Now, real quick, before we dive into this, light this candle, yesterday was the 11-year anniversary of when the Carriker Chronicles was born. Just so happened to be yesterday. This just so happens to be the next show. It's the way life works out sometimes. So season 12, episode 1. Essentially, Bo Pelini was fired. I went on an insane rant on Facebook, and the Carriker Chronicles was born. See, if you're not happy, just throw a fit on social media and everything works out. That is not my life advice. But welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Checking the pulse of Husker Nation, brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Also, CarrikerChronicles.com. It's where all your Husker sports hopes and dreams will come true. It's just science, ladies and gentlemen. Now, obviously, we're going to chat about John Butler being let go. Matt Rhule is about to hire his third, at some point, defensive coordinator over the next few weeks, going into his fourth year. And it's the second year in a row that we have an interim defensive coordinator. Phil Snow is going to be the interim defensive coordinator for the bowl game. Second year in a row, we have an interim defensive coordinator heading in to the bowl game. Lots of thoughts, lots of reactions, okay, to this. Going forward, like, we can talk about scheme. We can talk about prospective defensive coordinators. We can talk about all sorts of different things. We could talk about other coaches who are being evaluated right now. All right, but if you're like me and, like, legit, you just want to start with, regardless of who the defensive coordinator is, which matters, what scheme we're running, which matters. But if you just want a defense that is physical, hits hard, and tackles well, and that's what you want to start with, the base, the foundation, the core, all right, of our defense going forward, if that's what you're looking for, you're like me, smash the like button. Also, if you haven't done so yet, I say this all the time, but subscribe, ring that notification bell. It helps us out here. We appreciate it. But if you want to stay on top of Nebraska sports and Husker football coverage, bowl season's insane. Lane Kiffin, John Butler, it's only the beginning. All right, and then January is when the portal actually opens. Make sure you subscribe, ring that notification bell so you don't miss any of the insanity that's about to ensue with college football and Nebraska football going forward over the next month or two. All right, John Butler, Matt Rhule, Nebraska parted ways with him earlier this morning. We're just going to get through a couple of things real quick. Then I'll get to my thoughts, my comments, my reactions, and obviously, first of all, let me know in the comments, do you agree with Nebraska parting ways with John Butler? You can just simply say yes or no. You can elaborate if you would like. Just let me know in the comments. Okay, you look at the last 8 quarters of Nebraska's, the last 2 games of the year. All right, hold on. We got a super chat. If Terry doesn't get fired, I will have some questions about this move. So he's talking about Terry Braden, the defensive line coach. So some people feel like John Butler may be the scapegoat here. All right, it's like somebody's got to fall on the sword. Maybe it's John Butler. You're not getting rid of Eckler. I think Dana needs to do some things differently offensively, but I don't think you're getting rid of Dana. Now, John's probably not going to be the only guy where there's some changes made. All right. I think you've got a hard time evaluate the offensive line and how it's been coached. By the way, I talked about 3 defensive coordinators in 4 years. Once we hire our next defensive coordinator, we have had so many new coaches at so many new positions. You know, the one that's been the same for the past 4 years is the offensive line. And if you feel that's the right move, that's cool. But you got to evaluate all these positions. I was writing down like, hey, 2 offensive coordinators. You know, we've had 2 special teams coordinators, going to have a 3rd defensive. And I was going through everything, and it was like, man, the offensive line coach has not changed at all. And that's fine if that's where Rhule believes is best. But it can't be about who you know. It can't be about who you're related to. It's about the job that you've done. And I'm not calling for anybody to be fired. I'm calling for hardcore evaluations and tough decisions to be made. When it comes to Coach Braden, I addressed this on my show on Sunday. And if you didn't check it out, I said major changes need to be made here at Nebraska. I talked about Coach Braden, and the guy is ready to be a defensive line coach. Did our defensive line play great this year? No, they did not. They got knocked back. They didn't get off blocks. They didn't stay in their gaps. They lost contain at times. They did some good things at times. They're young. They're light in the britches. Coach Braden walked in after the Super Bowl. I'm fine with going to coaching in the Super Bowl. I wish he would have got here sooner, but he kind of walked in with his defensive line room kind of handed to him. Now, I will say one thing. The guys that we brought in via the transfer portal, hey, Gabe Moore's got a bright future, but you didn't expect him to start right away. Jalen George, FCS guy, all conference, like really good player. But I don't know if he was a guy he could have started right away. Anybody could run. I love being surprised, but you didn't sign him expecting them to start right away. There were depth pieces and more future pieces. There wasn't a whole lot of guys in that defensive line room that had experience, that were big bodies. Braden kind of inherited that room. Me personally, I'm willing to give him a little bit more benefit of the doubt, but that is not my decision. It doesn't matter what coach I'm talking about. It doesn't matter what position group, what coordinator. It's not my decision. I don't like diving deep into the who should be let go, who shouldn't, because that's Rhule's decision. I simply give my thoughts on how the positions group is performed as a whole, and I give my reaction afterwards once the guy who's in charge and the buck stops with him makes his decision. All right. Now, Rhule did call it unacceptable the past couple of games. But here's the deal. Nebraska against Penn State and Iowa, two teams we knew were going to run the ball. They were not going to pass the ball a ton. We knew they were going to run it. Penn State's coach, their interim coach, Terry Smith, before the game, I know someone he spoke to on the sideline. He goes, we're going to run it straight up their A. Talking about us. Like he knew that coming into the game. By the way, Penn State only beat Rutgers by 4. All right. I digress. It's become like a staple of the show. I'm just going to say I digress from time to time because I'm going to say it anyways. Our last two opponents ran the ball a combined 85 times for 444 yards. Just for perspective, that's over 5 yards a rush. And they also threw the ball for 17.3 yards per completion. When you have to sell out to stop the run like that, which I was fine with doing, you have to. But you got to stop the run better. Otherwise, you're left wide open to the pass. They averaged 17.3 yards per completion as well. Iowa averaged over 18 yards per reception against us. Iowa. It was unfortunate because it's not just the defense. Like there were some wide receivers who have gigantic ability and talent, and the ceiling is high, but we weren't winning those 50-50 balls. There was a few too many drops the past couple of games. All right, when you look at the red zone, Penn State and Iowa got into our red zone, 10 times. Nebraska's 20-yard line are in, and they scored 9 touchdowns. I don't know what to say to that. Not only did we not hold the field goals, like they scored 9. They scored touchdowns, not just scored points. They scored touchdowns 90% of the time. All right. Conversely, our offense had 9 trips inside of our opponent's red zone the past 2 games, and we only scored 2 touchdowns. So here's the deal: we had the worst red zone defense in the Big Ten. I mentioned that going into the past couple of games. We struggled to stop the run. We were around 90th or 100th in the country. I have not looked since the Iowa game. I know we were in the 90s heading into the Iowa game, stopping the run. The pass defense had been elite most of the year. Iowa only threw for 166 yards, but when you're averaging almost 20 yards per completion, I mean, goodness gracious. Okay. Let's see. One guy goes, Jericho744. Needs to be a shirt. Adam's saying I digress. Ange. New shirt idea. She's behind the camera. By the way, I have a wife joke later. Could you step out of the room when I make that joke? I didn't make the joke, but I'm going to read it. Okay. Before we move on, by the way, she picked out the shirt today that I'm wearing. Just FYI, getting in the holiday spirits. Okay. The Carriker Chronicles brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. As always, you can check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Concrete work, retaining wall work, they are the experts you want to go to. Have them do this type of work. If this is what you need done, go to dpsconstruction.net. If this is the type of work you do, same thing. You want to work for Jason Armstrong. He's the guy, the owner, the operator of the company. Good dude, knowledgeable, does a great job. Go to dpsconstruction.net. Also, shout out to Husker Auto Group. All right, Husker Chevrolet and GMC have aggressive pricing on 2025 model Silverados and Sierras for up to $11,000 off of MSRP. APR as low as 2.9% financing with approved credit. See dealer for details. Husker Chevrolet and GMC also has a great selection of 3/4-ton Silverado and Sierra trucks. Husker Chevrolet and GMC is locally owned and operated. Husker Auto Group is located conveniently off of North 27th Street and I-80 in North Lincoln. Also available 24/7, 365 at HuskerAutoGroup.com. Oh, wow. Somebody said, bring back Bob Diaco. Good sir, delete that comment. Oh, man. Somebody said, don't bring Tony White back. So this is interesting. There's a chance he may or may not be at Florida State. Now, Florida State's keeping Mike Norvell, but he's a chance he may do another staff overhaul again. It would be interesting if Tony White was available. I don't know. I don't think it'll happen. To be clear, it won't happen because of non-football stuff. But when he was here as our defensive coordinator, as a football coach, we were number 11 in the country in total defense, and we were number 19, top 20 both years. Again, I don't think it's going to happen. There's too much non-football stuff that'll factor into that decision. All right. And actually, Jake Bakoven, he's my producer on the Adam Carriker Show on 93.7 The Ticket. He made a phenomenal point today. Because I mentioned some folks are like, hey, John Butler, maybe he's the fall guy. Maybe he's the one falling on the sword. Maybe he's the only one who gets let go. Maybe he's not. Again, I'm not calling for anybody to be let go. I know I specifically pointed to the O-line when it comes to harsh evaluations. And if you need to make a tough decision, then make it. But if the best decision is to keep some coaches here, then make that decision. That's not my call. But Jake made a great observation because John Butler was brought here late in the summer, a couple of years ago. Tony White was not really consulted about this. He was just kind of handed John Butler as his defensive secondaries coach. We go through that next season. Tony White, Terrence Knighton leave. John Butler becomes the defensive coordinator. Matt Rhule chose John Butler over other candidates. And there was a little bit of scrutiny, but Matt Rhule said, this is the guy that I want. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not going to go with popular opinion. I'm going to go with the guy that I believe in. Obviously, we know how that turned out now. Hindsight, the benefit is 2020. But all of a sudden, now John Butler is let go. So you bring John Butler in without really giving Tony White a lot of choice. Tony White ends up leaving. John Butler becomes your defensive coordinator, and then you end up letting him go. When Jake pointed that out on the show, he just kind of sat and stared at me. And I'm going to do the same thing. And now I'm going to move on. All right. I do want to point out some positive things here. All right, Emmett Johnson. First of all, I pointed this out in my gut reaction to the Iowa game. It is absolutely blasphemous that he's not a Doak Walker finalist. And here's why. He was number one in the entire country amongst all Power 4 conference players when it came to all-purpose yards this year. He averaged 152 total yards per game. He was the Big Ten's leading rusher. He led Nebraska in receptions, which is great for Emmett, but not great for Nebraska. We got to spread the ball around more. You can't be that focused on one player. But when it comes to Emmett, that's insane. Here's another insane stat that's not talked about enough. He ran the ball 251 times this year. He had 47 receptions. That's 297 times he touched the ball, basically 300 at one fumble. That's a crazy stat to me right there. Okay, so we've got to get stronger in November. We've got to be better in Big Ten play and Big Ten weather in the month. I don't want to say that matters the most, but games to remember are played in November. Matt Rhule, over the past 4 years, 0-4, 1-3, 1-3, 2-10 in the month of November. You want to win games in November. You want to beat Penn State when you know they're not that good and they're just going to run the ball up your rear and back down your throat because the coach said it before the game, not publicly, but to a few people on the sideline I happen to know. And you know what Iowa's going to do. They could say nothing. You know what they're going to do. You've got to be more physical at the point of attack. You've got to be stouter up front on the defensive line. You got to knock people back. Now, there's going to be times when they get runs. There's going to be times when they get a 4 or 5 yard run, 8, 9 yard run. Maybe they break a big one every other game, not 3 times a game. But as an overall whole, you want to be that team that plays 4 full quarters. And instead of Kirk Ferentz in the locker room afterwards shouting to his team, we were the tougher team, we were the tougher team. And the interim head coach at Michigan, when they played us, openly talking about we were whooping them. It was tied at halftime, but we were whooping them. And I knew what we were going to do in the second half. And then they break off a 73-yard, 54-yard, and 37-yard touchdown run on us. And then you've got Minnesota players. In their press conference after they played us, they looked surprised, like we kept getting sacks. Now, this is an offensive side of the ball thing, but they were like, you get a sack, you get a sack. It was like playing with Oprah. Everybody gets a sack. I played those clips on my show on the ticket today, and it's just like it all comes back to physicality. It all comes back to up front, and we've got to be more physical at the point of attack. We've got to be better at tackling. We've got to be able to get guys down one-on-one tackling situations way more often than we are right now. Nebraska, at one point in the past 2 games, had given up 61 points in 6 quarters. That's over 10 points a quarter. Over the past 2 games, we ended up giving up 70 combined points. All right. Or 77 combined points and 791 yards of total offense in the past 2 games. That's rough. All right. You look at the past couple of games, we gave up 40 points, 37 points, 21 to UCLA, and 21 to USC. And that's all since Matt Rhule signed his deal. By the way, you probably have heard this, but if Matt Rhule doesn't win the bowl game, he's going to be 19-19, which is exactly 500, which is exactly what Mike Riley was, by the way, his 3 years here before he got let go. Now, Matt Rhule's not going anywhere. We know that. Okay. In the past 11 years, All right, we know Iowa's 10-1 versus Nebraska, but Nebraska is 56-74. Just think about that. In the past 11 years, winning seasons we've had 2. Just for comparison, Iowa's had 11 winning seasons, 4 seasons of 10 wins or more. They're 97-40 over that same time frame. They've been to 11 straight bowl games. We've been to 4. They have 0 new head coaches, and we've had 3. It starts at the top. Now, Matt Rhule's not going anywhere, and I'm fine with him signing that extension. He's got to prove himself, but we need some stability here. But, man, he's got to start making the right decisions. We can't be going through all these coordinators. We can't be going through all these different coaches. And if changes need to be made right now, that's fine. But you got to get the right guys in place to begin with. That's what I'm saying. You got to make the right decisions more often to begin with. You can't – I mean, you're going to swing and miss sometimes, but you got to hit the ball way more often. And you got to get on base. And you got to hit the ball hard. I know I'm using a baseball metaphor for hiring football coaches, but you get my point. All right. Another thing that would help is in-game management. Just in-game management in general needs to be better. I think that's an on-the-job learning type of thing for Coach Rhule. This one's brutal, and you've probably seen it. Kirk Ferentz is 7-1 in Big Ten games at Memorial Stadium. Nebraska's last 3 head coaches are combined 18-26 in Memorial Stadium in Big Ten games. Rhule is 6-8. Scott Frost 6-11. Mike Riley 6-7. All right. Now, let's get to Phil Snow is going to be the interim defensive coordinator for this bowl game. Potential defensive coordinator hires. And I'll be honest with you, I'm just literally talking off the top of my head. I have not done any sort of deep dive. I've not talked to anybody about who the likely candidates are. Matt Rhule has simply said over the course of the next few weeks, we'll make this decision. So we'll see what happens. Phil Snow's a choice. Everywhere that Matt Rhule's been, Temple, Baylor, Carolina, except Nebraska, he's been his defensive coordinator. Now, Snow really wants to be retired. He's only here in any sort of role to help out Matt Rhule to begin with. Even if Snow is hired, it's not a long-term hire because he's older. He doesn't want to do this a whole lot longer. So my gut tells me it's going to be someone else because of that. Jim Leonard is a guy, he's with the Broncos right now. I think the passing game coordinator, and he's got another role as well. Jim Leonard is a guy who was a walk-on, then an All-American at Wisconsin. And then he was a defensive coordinator at Wisconsin, a very good one. And then their interim coach, and a lot of Wisconsin people wish they would hire him as their head coach. I'm not advocating for that. What I'm saying, he's got to be a candidate for Nebraska's defensive coordinator job. Now, he's a 3-4 guy. That brings up the next question. Are we staying 3-3-5, or it's really a hybrid? Because there's a lot of times we have 3-man lines. There's a lot of time we have 4-man lines. I don't know. I've always been a 4-3-3-4 guy. When Tony White came in and implemented the 3-3-5 or the hybrid, I had to learn about it. I knew about it. Essentially, it was a scheme that was devised by a coach in California he didn't have the manpower. He didn't have the athletes. He didn't have the talent to keep up with some of the better teams that they were playing. So he devised a 3-3-5 scheme. And I said this earlier today, and I'll say it again. It's kind of a trick-em-dick-em scheme. That's not disrespectful. It just means you can throw a whole bunch of things at your opponent and try to confuse them because maybe athletically you can't keep up with them. Now, you could always say, well, what if you ran that with really good athletes? Well, that's the idea the Rhule has. So maybe he wants to keep running it because I know he likes it. He's been very clear about that in the past. Maybe his mind has changed. 3-4, 4-3, 3-3-5, hybrid, whatever the case may be, 4-2-5. I have always thought that personnel, players, and coaches honestly matter more than the scheme. Now, if you're walking up there with like a 2-11 or something, I've never even heard of that. Although there was a Monday Night Football game years ago. I was in college. The Patriots played the Dolphins on Monday Night Football. There was a 3rd down package. Bill Belichick had 0 defensive linemen. He had all linebackers and DBs just walking around, and then all of a sudden, boom, they'd go all over the place on the snap of the ball. I never saw him do it again. It must have been something unique with the Dolphins offense. Okay, maybe they just never ran the ball. I don't know. And it worked really well. My point is, it's more important the guys you have in that locker room, the players you have, the coaches you have, and how you play than the scheme itself. I'm personally a 3-4-4-3 guy, but I've seen 3-4-4-3 schemes work. I've seen them fail. I've seen 3-3-5 hybrid schemes work. I've seen them fail. So I can dive into more of the X's and O's of what I prefer later on and why. All right, you've got Jim Leonard. Oh, there were some other names that popped into my head earlier today that escaped me. Put some of the names in the chat. For some reason, I am blanking right now Okay. In the meantime, send some names in the chat of potential defensive coordinators. I had like 3 names earlier in the day that popped in my head, and right now I'm blanking. While you do that, I want to give a shout out to a couple of more sponsors. Okay. I want to give a shout out to Allen Capital Group. Like, legit, one of the most stressful things in a person's life can be your finances. In your marriage, it can be your finances. In general, when it comes to taking care of your family, it can be finances. If you want people who are knowledgeable, who have high character and care about their clients, it's Allen Capital Group. Check them out at allencapgroup.com. That's ALLENCAP group.com. Okay, allencapgroup.com, allencapgroup.com. They have offices in Omaha, Omaha, Grand Island, Ogallala. I combined Omaha and Ogallala. Omaha, Grand Island, Ogallala, and Scotts Bluff. Okay, Allen Capital Group. They have next level solutions for next level needs. Again, check them out at allencapgroup.com. They've taken care of my family's finances for over a decade. Peace of mind has been a blessing from them. Also, 626 Auto Service in Lincoln. Check them out at 626autoservice.com. They're located at 2405 P Street in good old Lincoln, Nebraska. They're locally owned for 20 years, 2 decades, ladies and gentlemen. When you go in, ask for Dean Phelps. He's the owner, good dude. You can trust what he tells you, knowledgeable, and or Eric. All right, tell him that Adam sent you. They do great work at a very reasonable price. All right, we now have kids who are driving, so it's where my family, everyone in our house who drives, we all take our vehicles there. They do everything from oil changes to engine replacements. They offer shuttle rides, loaner vehicles, and financing as well if needed. Again, that's 626 Auto Service in Lincoln. Check them out at 626autoservice.com. So one person asked, Adam, do you have a cold? Yes, I do. I was hoping I could get through this without people noticing. Yeah, I do have a cold. So, all right, let me see. DJ Durkin from Auburn. We'll see what happens there. Okay. Let's see what else. A lot of people are typing in Adam. Do you have any eligibility left? Adam, would you ever possibly coach for Nebraska? Here's what I'll tell you. I don't think I said this. I can't remember. I've done a lot of interviews recently. I can't remember if I said it in an interview, if I said it here, if I said it on the ticket. Like Mike Riley's second year, I had a brief conversation one time with somebody because the defensive line coach, I think, took another job or got let go. I can't remember, so long ago. And I had a conversation one time with somebody at the university about potential being a defensive line coach. It's something, if they picked up the phone and they called me, we could have a chat. In the meantime, I'm not going to lie. I love what I do. I love having the time to spend with my kids when I'm not doing this and I'm at the ticket and I got multiple things that I'm doing. I enjoy it. I will say this. If they picked up the phone and called me, we could have a convo. I don't know how likely that is, but we'll see. All right. So they just let go of Mark Stoops at Kentucky. That's an interesting one. All right. That's an interesting one right there. Let's see what else we got here. Omaha. Somebody just typed in Omaha. Oh, a couple of people have typed in Carl Pelini, Bo Pelini. Somebody asked me, and right now, the only change that's been made is the defensive coordinator. So keep that in mind when I say this. But what they asked me to go, would you hire Bo Pelini as the D coordinator, Scott Frost as the offensive coordinator, Bill Callahan as the offensive line coach, Carl Pelini as the defensive line coach, Mike Riley is like a special advisor? I was like, man, that would be a loaded staff. Do you have any idea how quickly those guys would kill each other, by the way? There is a lot of history there between certain guys. Some of it positive, some of it not. I remember Bo Pelini. The first year that Callahan was our coach, we were playing at Oklahoma. He was their defensive coordinator. I remember we're walking off the field. Oklahoma beat us, and he's yelling at Callahan, "You got my effing job, you mother effer." Like, I don't think those two would work well together. I'm just saying. Obviously, this is hypothetical. There's only been one move made at this point in time, but just to answer that particular question. All right, let's see what else we got here. Bowl projections, not to get off topic. Now, we'll see how this all plays out. Obviously, what happens championship weekend, you never know exactly who bowl games are going to take, but it kind of seems like the Citrus Bowl might take Michigan, Alamo, USC, Tampa, Iowa. Some people are projecting us to Nashville, some to Las Vegas, some to the Phoenix Bowl. Now, if you go by who has the tiebreakers here, I believe it's Illinois has the best record. I believe Minnesota has the tiebreaker. Even Washington would be up there. But we have the fans, which is why I think we're projected to go to Las Vegas. And if we go to Vegas, a likely opponent is Utah. Well, let's talk about SEC bias for a second, then we'll get back to the topic at hand. You know, there's two undefeated teams in the entire FBS. They're playing this weekend. They're number one, number two in the country. Ohio State, Indiana. Do you know where College Game Day is? The ESPN SEC Network College Game Day crew is going to the SEC championship game. Enough said. All right. Oh, here's the original post that was put out years ago. Well, it's kind of a combination that my wife put together. I think I actually put this back out in 2022, but I screenshotted it because it popped up in my Facebook memories. So that's a little bit about the initial, that was 8 years ago at that point in time. So obviously now we're going into year 12. That was a little bit how the initial Carriker Chronicles post that was ever put out worked, or looked, I should say. All right. Jim Knowles is an interesting one. Justin Wilcox. All right. Is another one. Ed Orgeron. That would be very interesting and rather controversial. I don't see Matt Rhule making that one right there. Okay. Couple minutes left here. Final thoughts on this. You know that, real quick, Nebraska has a 57-72 record in the Big Ten Conference play in recent years. Matt Rhule's won 37% of his Big Ten Conference games, 17% of his games in November, 0% winning percentage versus ranked teams. And Iowa's not like blowing it out the water, but they at least win 2 out of every 3 Big Ten games they play. They have a 65% winning percentage in the Big Ten. Iowa has very few conference titles, no national titles, and that's what people always bring up. But you know what they do? They maximize the talent and athleticism they have. They coach well, they play physical football, and they beat the snot out of us right now. And so I would like to get to a level where we're winning 8, 9, 10 games every year. By the way, isn't it like Georgia, Alabama? I forget who the other program is. Oregon, maybe, and Iowa are the 4 programs in the past 10 years that have won 8 games or more every single year. All right. My final thoughts are this. Going forward, I support stability in the program. I would not let go of any other coaches unless they need to be let go. I would not let anybody go just for the sake of letting them go. But if decisions and changes need to be made, then make those changes. It's got to be about what's best for the program. Then you've got to do the right moves going forward. If you're Matt Rhule, you can't be hiring a 4th defensive coordinator in 5 years next year. And you're going into your 5th season. You can't be hiring another offensive coordinator. You can't be hiring. I don't think. With Dana Holgorsen, I'm like, let's just switch up some things we're doing on the offensive side of the ball schematically. Dana Holgorsen's a good offensive coordinator. Just switch up what you're doing. Okay. And I wonder, does that have to do with, Dylan Raiola is more of a pro-style quarterback. Is that why we ran that type of offense? Was it dictated to Dana? You have to do this. He said he learned their system, their terminology of their system. But he was allowed to do what he wanted. And he said before the season, there's going to be more NFL-style offense than it's ever been. I wonder if that's because, was he told that by Rhule? Does he just feel that's the best thing to do with Raiola's skill set? Whatever the case, I think he's got to go back to a little bit more of what he's done in the past, because that is what has made him so successful, in my humble opinion, in the past. So Eckler's not going anywhere. I think Holgorsen just tweak a few things schematically on offense, cut loose, my man. Defensively, we've got to bring in impact players. We've got a lot of guys coming back up front, but we got to bring in some impact players on the defensive line, guys who can get after the quarterback, guys who are physical, guys who are going to buy into the way that we want to play football, which is knock them back up front. We're going to hit you in the mouth. Woody Hayes, former Ohio State coach, said the definition of physicality is 2 guys just hitting each other. Oh, it can be boxing, it can be UFC, it can be football. Boom, 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 until somebody stops hitting and the other guy just keeps hitting. I want to be that physical in a football sense, obviously. All right. We have to get more of these decisions right going forward. We can't keep starting over all the time every year. Those are my final thoughts. Have a higher batting average on the coaches that we're hiring and the success rate they're having here at Nebraska. I hear my fan questions for your fine folks at home. They're brought to you by Husker Auto Group. Check them out, huskerautogroup.com. Number 1, do you agree with letting John Butler go? I already asked that. Number 2, should we keep the 3-3-5 hybrid defense or not? Number 3, what other major changes, personnel-wise or not, do you think need to be made? All right, let me know in the comments below. Until next time, quit busting my nuts, go Big Red, and always remember to throw the bones. Ooh, I'll share the wife thing next time. Sorry about that.